You close your eyes and let your breath flow like a tide, slow and steady. And in the rhythm of this quiet tide, you begin to imagine space, not as a cold void, not as an emptiness to fear, but as an ocean vast and deep, stretching beyond the edges of sight, an ocean whose waves are not of water but starlight, an ocean whose currents are the invisible flows of gravity. And as you drift across this ocean, you notice that it is not flat, not still, but alive with shapes, with swells, with patterns, galaxies turning like whirlpools, stars shimmering like islands, nebulae drifting like clouds amidst above a sea too wide to measure. And in this vastness, hidden in the folds of space, you sense the most mysterious of all formations, black holes, not as monsters waiting to devour, but as whirlpools in this ocean of space-time, places where the surface curves steeply inward, where light itself slips beneath the waves and cannot return. And yet, even in their darkness, they are not merely destroyers, but also sculptors, shaping the galaxies that turn around them, anchoring the rhythms of the cosmos, guardians of mystery rather than bringers of fear. And so as you breathe, you let go of dread and instead welcome curiosity, wondering what these shadows truly are, what it means to stand at the edge of their sight. You drift now deeper into this ocean, floating gently as though weightless. And you notice that stars themselves are like lighthouses scattered across its surface, each one a beacon of fire holding back the dark, each one bound by the same gravity that holds you to Earth. But when the most massive of these stars reach the end of their long lives, when they exhaust the fuel that keeps their fire burning, they collapse, pulled inward by their own weight, their light flickering out, their substance falling past the point where nothing can resist. And from that silent, a black hole is born, not a thing in the ordinary sense, but a region, a pocket of space-time folded so tightly that nothing, not even light, can escape. And yet this is not the end of the story, but the beginning of a deeper one. For these dark regions become landmarks in the universe, hidden in their invisibility, yet shaping everything around them. You pause, breathing softly, and think of how you have always imagined space as empty, but now you see it differently, as fabric, as texture, as something that can be bent, stretched, curved, and black holes are the places where that fabric is drawn inward so powerfully that it forms a well, a bottomless hollow, a place of no return. And you let this picture soften in your mind, not as terror, but as wonder, the way you might gaze into the depths of a well of water, seeing darkness below, but also sensing depth, history, and possibility. You imagine yourself drifting toward one of these wells, slowly, gently, without fear, and as you approach, you see not a gaping maw, but a sphere of shadow surrounded by light. Stars behind it bend into arcs, their rays pulled and curved by the black hole's gravity, creating a halo, a glowing ring, an echo of the world hidden within. And you realize that even in darkness there is beauty, that even what cannot be seen leaves its mark upon what can, that black holes are both absence and presence, both mystery and revelation. You breathe again, slower now, and think of the first photograph humanity ever made of a black hole's shadow, a ring of orange fire circling a dark heart, captured not by one telescope, but by many working together. Earth itself turned into an eye wide enough to glimpse the unglimpsable, and in that image you feel not fear but tenderness, as though the cosmos had allowed us, just for a moment, to peek behind the veil, to see the gentle darkness at the edge of sight. You drift further now, carried by the thought that black holes are teachers, inviting us to reconsider what we thought we knew, for they blur the line between space and time. They bend the rules of reality itself. They remind us that the universe is not fixed and rigid but pliable, malleable, like an ocean that can swirl into whirlpools. And as you rest in this awareness, you feel a calm humility, the sense that you are part of something vaster than your comprehension, and yet your mind, your imagination, is capable of touching its edges, of sensing its outlines, of asking what it means. You think of gravity, that quiet force that pulls you gently to the ground, that holds the moon in orbit, that guides planets around stars, and realize that in black holes gravity becomes absolute, irresistible, infinite in strength at the center, pulling not only matter but light itself. And you marvel at this, that something so familiar, so gentle in your daily life, can in other places become so overwhelming, so complete, and yet still not monstrous. For it is only nature, only the universe expressing its own depth. Breathe again, let the thoughts soothe you. Black holes are not intruders, not errors, but natural outcomes, the inevitable result of stars too heavy to sustain themselves, the natural whirlpools of a cosmic sea. and their presence does not diminish the universe, but enriches it, adding mystery, adding depth, adding silence against which the light of stars appears even brighter. You drift further still, and imagine what it would be like to float at the very edge of a black hole, at the event horizon, the boundary beyond which return is impossible, and you see it as a shoreline, not a cliff but a horizon of calm, where light bends and time itself slows, where from your perspective everything around you continues, but from the perspective of those far away, you appear frozen, suspended, never quite crossing, caught in an eternal pause, and you feel the poetry of this. That black holes not only fold space but stretch time, that there are not only whirlpools in the ocean but tides in the river of moments, pulling hours into centuries, seconds into infinities, and in this stretching you glimpse the mystery of time itself, the way it is both constant and relative, both shared and personal, both flowing and warped. Pause here, breathe, let this wonder settle. Black holes are not only objects but experiences, not only regions of space but metaphors of perception, for mystery, for the limits of knowing. You think of how humanity has always peered into darkness, into caves, into oceans, into skies, seeking what lies beyond, and black holes are the latest horizon of this ancient longing, the edge where curiosity itself bends inward, the boundary where knowledge pauses but does not end. You drift in this reflection, and realize that calling them black holes is both accurate and misleading, for they are not holes in the sense of emptiness. They are fullness, dense beyond comprehension, heavy with collapsed stars, filled with memory of what once burned, and yet presenting to the universe only silence, only shadow, only the curve of space-time itself. You rest now, imagining the universe as a great story written in light, and black holes as the punctuation marks, the pauses, the silences between words, the rest in the cosmic music, necessary not for destruction but for rhythm, not for erasure but for depth, and you feel a comfort in this, the thought that even silence has meaning, even absence has presence, even the darkest places are part of the harmony of the whole. And as your breath grows slower, your body softer, your mind calmer, you carry with you the gentle awareness that black holes are not to be feared but to be wondered at, not monsters but mysteries, not erasers of meaning but reminders that meaning itself is not always visible. Sometimes it is hidden, folded, waiting. And softly, as the chapter closes, a question rises like a distant star. If black holes are born from collapsing stars, what is the life of a star, and how does its long burning journey lead to such a silent end? And that the story of stellar death and rebirth is where your path drifts next. You breathe slowly, feeling the quiet curiosity left by the first glimpse of the gentle darkness at the edge of sight, and now your mind drifts toward the lives of stars themselves. For black holes are not born out of nothing. They are the last chapter in the long biography of stars. And to understand their silence, you must first listen to their songs. And so you imagine the night sky above you, countless pinpricks of light scattered across velvet darkness. And each one is not a cold, but a blazing sun, burning with forces so immense you can scarcely imagine, yet shining steadily across impossible distances, their light arriving in your eyes after journeys lasting centuries, even millennia. So that when you gaze upward, you are not seeing the present but the past, the memories of stars carried to you on rivers of photons. And in this reflection, you realize that stars are storytellers, telling you not only of their brilliance, but of their lifetimes, their rhythms, their eventual deaths. And you let yourself drift into that story, slow and patient as the stars themselves. You begin with birth, the gathering of dust and gas in the quiet wombs of nebulae, clouds so vast they stretch for light years, yet delicate, filled with the raw ingredient of hydrogen and helium, atoms floating like seeds in a cosmic nursery. And then, drawn by gravity, these atoms fall together, pulled inward, compressing until their density and heat awakens something miraculous, nuclear fusion, the quiet alchemy by which hydrogen becomes helium, releasing energy in waves of light and warmth. And suddenly, a star is born, not in an instant but over eons, a faint ember growing into a fire, shining into the darkness of space, announcing itself as another sun in the galaxy's choir of voices. You breathe in this image, and you imagine our own sun, steady and calm, burning for billions of years, its energy spilling across space, warming Earth, guiding life, and you understand that stars are engines of creation, not only shining but also forging the elements within their cores, turning hydrogen into helium, helium into carbon, carbon into oxygen, climbing the ladder of elements, building the stuff of worlds, the atoms of your bones, the oxygen in your lungs, the iron in your blood, all born in the hearts of stars, and this realization softens you, makes you feel intimately connected to the sky, for you are not separate from the stars. You are their continuation, their echo, their legacy. And yet even the brightest stars cannot burn forever, for their fuel, though vast, is finite, and eventually the balance falters, the pressure of fusion no longer able to resist the pull of gravity. And so stars begin to change, to age, to drift toward their end. You imagine a small star like our sun swelling into a red giant, its outer layers expanding outward, swallowing nearby worlds, until it sheds its atmosphere, leaving behind a glowing ember, a white dwarf, fading slowly into silence. But the truly massive stars, those many times larger than our sun, walk a different path, a more violent one. For their cores grow so heavy that even fusion cannot save them, their iron hearts no longer able to release energy, and gravity wins, pulling the star inward, collapsing in a fraction of a second, and the outer layers rebound in a furious explosion. A supernova, brighter than a galaxy, a flash that for weeks or months can outshine billions of stars, scattering elements into space, seeding the cosmos with the building blocks of new stars, new planets, new life. And then, when the fire of the explosion fades, what remains is silence. The star's core collapses into an object so dense, so strange, that it becomes either a neutron star, an unimaginable sphere of matter compressed into the weight of mountains in a spoonful, or, if the star was heavy enough, a black hole, gravity folding the star into darkness, leaving no remnant but the invisible well of space-time itself. Breathe again. Let this story linger, for it tells you that black holes are not foreign invaders, but the final breath of stars, natural and inevitable, part of the cycle of creation and destruction that has shaped the universe since its first moments. You think again of supernovae, those dazzling deaths, and how humanity has watched them from Earth, bright stars appearing suddenly in the sky where none had been before, so bright they could be seen in daylight, so shocking that ancient people recorded them on parchment and stone, calling them omens, messages, tears in the heavens. But you now know they were not omens of doom but of rebirth, the scattering of elements into the galaxy, the seeding of futures, the fiery deaths that make new beginnings possible, and you rest in the comfort of this, that even collapse is not the end. It is part of a rhythm, a continuation, a transformation. You let your breath slow again, and you imagine falling gently into the heart of such a star as it collapses, and though the violence is beyond comprehension, you are told the story slowly, softly, as if in a dream. First the star's outer layers drift outward like petals, then its core folds inward like a blossom closing, and then in silence the fabric of space-time bends, forming the gentle whirlpool of gravity that is a black hole. And though the process is violent, the result is serene, a calm shadow in the sea of stars, invisible yet present, shaping orbits, anchoring galaxies, holding secrets of what once burned. Pause here, breathe, and feel the paradox. Stars die, and yet they give life. Stars collapse, and yet they leave behind futures. Stars fall into silence, and yet their deaths echo across the universe in the atoms they release, in the black holes they create, in the rhythms of galaxies that turn around them. And as you rest in this awareness, you feel a soft humility. You are not separate from this cycle, for the calcium in your teeth, the carbon in your cells, the oxygen you breathe were forged in stars that died long ago, stars that collapsed into silence so that you might live. And this makes every breath you take a remembrance, every heartbeat a continuation of their story, every moment of your life a thread in the tapestry woven by their burning and their fading. Breathe again, softer now, and realize that to know black holes you must also know the stars that create them, and to know the stars you must know gravity, the sculptor of their lives and deaths, the force that begins their birth and ends their song. And so, as you drift toward rest, the next question rises like a gentle tide. What is gravity itself? This invisible hand that holds the cosmos together and folds it into black holes. And that is the story your journey will follow next. You breathe slowly, letting the echo of collapsing stars linger in your imagination, their fiery ends dissolving into silence. And now you turn your attention to the force that guided their birth, sustained their burning, and finally pulled them into darkness, a force so familiar you feel it every moment of your life, yet so mysterious it shapes the entire cosmos. And that force is gravity, the quiet hand that holds and folds the universe. And as you rest in calm awareness, you feel it within your body, the soft weight that presses you against the bed, the pull that anchors oceans to earth, the tether that keeps the moon circling in its gentle path. And you realize that gravity is not loud, not urgent, but constant, steady, always present, the silent companion of your every breath. And though you have grown used to its presence, it is the sculptor of worlds, the reason stars exist, the reason galaxies turn, the reason black holes are born. And so you are invited now to drift deeper into its mystery, to see it not only as a downward pull, but as the bending and folding of reality itself. You begin with the simplest memory, the apple falling, the story of Isaac Newton, who gazed at the everyday and glimpsed the universal, realizing that the same force that brings a fruit to the ground also guides the planets around the sun, a single principle uniting the motion of all things. And though his mathematics described it beautifully as an attraction between masses, his vision was also a meditation, an acknowledgement that the universe is woven together by invisible bonds. And this thought comforts you, for it means that nothing drifts entirely alone. Everything is connected by this quiet thread of attraction. You breathe again, and centuries drift by in your imagination, until you arrive at Albert Einstein, who listened even more deeply to gravity's whisper and realized that it is not simply a force pulling across distance, but the shape of space-time itself, the fabric of reality curving in the presence of mass and energy. And you imagine this fabric as a sheet stretched wide, stars and planets resting upon it, their weight bending into curves, so that smaller bodies roll along those curves, not pulled by invisible strings, but guided by the fold of the sheet itself. And you see that this is not just metaphor, it is reality, confirmed by light bending around the sun during eclipses, by clocks ticking differently in strong gravity, by the way space itself ripples when black holes collide. Breathe softly as you let this image deepen. The universe is fabric, pliable and responsive, folding and stretching under the weight of stars, under the turning of galaxies, under the silence of black holes, and gravity as the sculptor of this fabric, the weaver of cosmic geometry, the hand that folds reality into wells and valleys. And as you drift deeper into this thought, you begin to sense the poetry of it. For gravity is patient, never hurried, working across billions of years, shaping stars from clouds, guiding galaxies into spirals, drawing planets into orbits where life can arise. And yet it is also immediate, here in the pull that keeps your feet on the ground, here in the rhythm of tides that respond to the moon's embrace, here in the weight of your body pressing into Earth's surface. And this duality soothes you, the thought that something so grand is also so intimate, that the same hand that folds space-time around black holes also holds you gently in your bed tonight. You breathe again, slower now, and imagine floating above Earth, watching the ocean swell and fall with the tides, the moon's pull stretching water across the globe, a reminder that gravity does not only hold but also moves. It orchestrates motion, it creates rhythm, it weaves time into cycles. And from this rhythm, life itself has learned to grow, to follow tides, to follow orbits, to follow seasons carved by the Earth's dance around the sun, all shaped by gravity's hand. You let this realization soften you, and you think of galaxies, vast spirals of stars turning slowly, their arms stretched wide, each star held in orbit by gravity's embrace, and at their centers, black holes, anchoring the dance, reminding you that gravity is not only a sculptor, but also a gatherer, bringing matter together into stars, stars into galaxies, galaxies into clusters, shaping the large-scale web of the cosmos, filaments of galaxies stretched like threads across unimaginable distances, all woven by gravity's hand. And in this image you see the universe as tapestry, vast and intricate, every thread a galaxy, every knot a cluster, and gravity as the weaver, folding and holding the fabric together. Breathe again, and let the thoughts soften further. Gravity is the quietest of the fundamental forces, weaker than electromagnetism, weaker than the strong and weak nuclear interactions. And yet because it is always attractive, never canceling, it dominates on the grandest scales. And this too feels like poetry, that what is weakest in one sense becomes strongest in another, that what is gentle in the small becomes mighty in the vast. And you carry this lesson within you, a reminder that quiet, strength persistent and patient, shapes more than bursts of power ever could. You drift further now, imagining what happens when gravity is taken to extremes, when stars collapse, when black holes form, when space-time folds so tightly that horizons appear. And though the physics may be complex, the feeling is simple. Gravity is the invitation into mystery, the path that leads you to black holes, the sculptor the very stage upon which the universe performs its play. You breathe once more, slower still, and you let this awareness calm you. You are not outside this play. You are within it. Every atom in your body pressed together by gravity, every heartbeat taking place in a space-time curved by Earth's presence, every breath anchored by the same hand that folds galaxies. And this connection soothes you, reminding you that you are part of the same fabric, folded and held by the same quiet embrace. And now, as your body sinks into stillness, another question begins to rise, soft as starlight. If gravity is a sculptor, then what the edge it creates, the boundary where falling becomes forever, the horizon where light itself is lost, and that, the mystery of event horizons, is where your path drifts next. You breathe slowly, letting the folds of gravity linger in your imagination like ripples on a vast sheet. And now your mind drifts toward the place where gravity's embrace becomes absolute, the edge where space and time bend so steeply that nothing can climb back, the place known as the event horizon, the horizon of no return. And as you rest in calm awareness, you imagine it not as a violent wall, but as a quiet shoreline, a boundary drawn not in matter but in possibility, a place where paths that once led outward now curve endlessly inward, where light itself, the swiftest traveler in the universe, finds no escape, and you begin to see it like the edge of a great waterfall, a river flowing gently until suddenly it tips downward, vanishing into mist. And though the water may continue beyond, from the vantage point above it disappears, hidden from view. And so, too, the event horizon hides a continuation of space-time, not because nothing exists there, but because nothing that crosses can return to tell the story. And in this image you feel not fear but wonder, the gentle awe of standing on a shoreline gazing at an endless sea. You breathe again, softer, and imagine yourself floating just outside this horizon, watching the glow of stars bend into arcs around the blackness, their light distorted by the gravity of the black hole, creating a ring, a halo, a shadow of presence. And you realize that this shadow is not the black hole itself but a horizon, the boundary traced by light that almost escaped but did not, the silhouette of the unknowable. And you find poetry in this, that the most mysterious places in the universe reveal themselves not by what they show but by what they hide, that absence itself can leave a mark, that invisibility can still be seen. You let this thought soften, and you imagine drifting closer, slower, toward the horizon, and you realize that from your own perspective, nothing feels sudden, nothing feels like impact. You simply cross, continuing inward, the horizon not marked by a wall or barrier but by silence. And yet for those watching from afar, your crossing never seems to happen. Your approach slows, your light redshifts, stretched into longer and longer wavelengths, until it fades into invisibility, frozen in time at the edge. And this paradox comforts you, for it reminds you that time itself is relative, that horizons are not only in space, but also in experience, that what feels like a simple continuation for one may appear eternal for another, and this duality is part of the fabric of reality. You breathe deeply, imagining how the horizon is both near and unreachable, both simple and profound, and you let the metaphor grow. In life, too, there are horizons, thresholds beyond which you cannot see, moments where paths vanish into unknowns, and yet you cross them without noticing, stepping into new phases of being, leaving observers behind with only the memory of your light, stretched and fading. And this makes the event horizon feel familiar, not alien, for it is a cosmic mirror of every transition, every threshold, every moment when you move from what was into what will be. You pause here, resting in the softness of this thought, and then you drift further, imagining the physics that shapes this boundary. The escape velocity at the horizon equals the speed of light. No signal, no particle, no wave can exceed it. And so beyond this edge the universe loses access. The outside world can no longer know what happens within, and yet some whispers suggest information may not truly vanish, that it might be encoded somehow at the horizon itself, like patterns written on a surface, waiting to be understood. And this thought glimmers quietly in your mind, a mystery to be returned to later. But for now you rest in the simplicity of the horizon as a boundary of knowing. You breathe once more, and picture the image captured by astronomers in 2019. The first photograph of a black hole's shadow, the glowing orange ring of light bent by gravity, surrounding a dark center, the event horizon traced not directly, but by its influence. And you feel reverence for this, that humanity has seen with its own instruments what was once only imagined, that we have gazed at the horizon of no return and found beauty, not terror, and that beauty lingers in your thoughts like a lullaby, soothing, steady, eternal. You drift further and think of how horizons are not static but living, growing as the black hole feeds, shrinking as it radiates, their size reflecting the mass within. And this too feels poetic, that boundaries expand and contract, that horizons shift, that nothing remains fixed forever. And you realize that black holes are not objects but processes, not things but events, unfolding across time, shaping and shaped by the universe around them. You let this awareness calm you, and then you imagine yourself once more at the edge, gazing outward this time, and you see the universe from a new perspective, distant galaxies warped by gravity's lens, time slowed, light bent, and you understand that horizons are not only limits but vantage points, places where the universe shows itself differently, where perception itself is transformed. Breathe again, slower, softer, and let the metaphor deepen. The event horizon is not only a cosmic edge, but also a symbol of mystery itself. The reminder that knowledge has boundaries, that curiosity will always find places it cannot pass, and yet that does not end the story. It only enriches it, for mystery is not emptiness but invitation, not silence but depth. And so, as your breath grows calmer, your body softer, your mind quieter, you rest in this thought. The horizon of no return is not a wall but a whisper, not an end but a threshold, not a destruction but a folding into the unknown. And as you drift towards sleep, one final question arises like a ripple in the dark. If the horizon is the edge, then what the journey beyond it? What does it mean to fall, to cross, to be drawn into silence? And that the story of falling without end is where your path flows next. You breathe softly, feeling the glow of the horizon of no return fading behind you. And now you let yourself imagine what it would mean to step across that edge, to move past the boundary where light itself cannot turn back. And you begin to feel the sensation of falling, not a sudden plunge but a slow, eternal descent, a drift into the heart of gravity's embrace. And in this falling you discover that the black hole does not roar or rage. It does not clutch or crush with violence. It simply guides you inward, pulling you along curves of space-time that are as smooth as they are inevitable, and you realize that this fall without end is not unlike surrendering to sleep itself, letting go of the need to resist, allowing gravity to carry you deeper, deeper into silence. You imagine yourself as a traveler, floating toward the horizon, and from your perspective nothing dramatic happens when you cross. No wall, no flash, just a continuation of motion, the horizon slipping behind you without announcement, and you continue inward, the pull growing stronger with the experience remaining calm. And yet, if someone were watching you from far away, they would never see you cross. They would see your image slow, your light redshift into longer, fainter waves until you faded from their sight, frozen at the edge forever. And you realize that this paradox is part of the mystery, that what feels to you like continuation looks to them like eternal pause. And in this duality, you sense the strangeness of time itself, flowing differently depending on where you are, bending with the gravity that shapes it, reminding you that falling into a black hole is not only a journey through space, but also a journey through time. You breathe again, softer now, and let your imagination drift inward with you, and you begin to see light bending in strange arcs, starlight wrapping around you from all sides, until the outside universe appears as a bright sphere shrinking behind you, a whole cosmos compressed into a fading window, while ahead lies only darkness, smooth and unbroken. And though it feels empty, you know it is full, curved so tightly that no light escapes. And this image soothes you, for it feels not like erasure, but like entering a cocoon, wrapped in silence, carried into mystery. You think of what scientists call spaghettification, the stretching of matter by the difference in gravitational pull between your head and your feet. And though the word sounds almost humorous, the reality is both strange and profound, for as you fall closer to singularity, this difference grows, stretching you thinner and thinner until atoms themselves are pulled apart. But in your gentle imagining, this stretching feels like lengthening into infinity, like being drawn out into the fabric of space-time itself, not with pain but with release, as though your being is merging with the currents of gravity. You breathe, and you think of the singularity, the hidden heart of the black hole, where all paths converge, where density grows infinite, where the laws of physics themselves fall silent. And though you cannot picture it fully, you can imagine it as a point of mystery, a place beyond knowing. And as you drift toward it, you feel not terror but humility, as though you are approaching the innermost sanctuary of the universe, a place that no traveler can describe because no traveler can return. And yet, as you fall, you remember that black holes are not only destroyers, they are also teachers, for in their silence they remind you that knowledge has boundaries, that curiosity always meets edges, and that those edges are not endings but invitations to wonder. You let this awareness calm you, and you think of how in life, too, you fall into unknowns, into changes, into silences, and though others may see you pause, frozen in memory, from your perspective you continue. You flow, you drift onward, and this parallel makes the event horizon feel like a metaphor for every threshold, every crossing, every surrender to what comes next. You breathe again, letting this falling soothe you, and you picture yourself drifting deeper, time stretching, space folding, light vanishing, until you feel as though you're becoming part of the black hole itself, no longer separate but woven into its fabric, your story merging with its silence, your memory carried outward only in the gravity waves that ripple when black holes collide, or in the photons bent and scattered by your approach. And you realize that in a sense, nothing is ever truly lost. It is transformed, reshaped, carried into new forms, even if the details vanish from sight. Pause here, and let this comfort you. Falling into a black hole is not an end but a transformation, not destruction but change. And though the singularity remains hidden, the falling itself is a journey of perspective, of time, of meaning. You breathe once more, slowly, deeply, and you feel yourself soften into this thought. To fall without end is not a punishment but a surrender, not terror but trust, an opening into mystery. And as you rest in this awareness, one question rises like a quiet tide. If black holes swallow light and time, how then do we ever see them? How do we glimpse their shadows and echoes across the cosmos? And that the story of their lightless portraits is where your journey flows next. You breathe slowly, letting the sensation of falling without end fade into quiet stillness. And now you drift into another wonder, the paradox that black holes, though they are the darkest places in the universe, are also revealed to us through light, not through what they emit, but through how they bend, distort, and shape the light around them. And as you rest in calm awareness, you realize that invisibility does not mean absence, for even silence leaves echoes, even darkness leaves shadows. And it is through these echoes and shadows that we first learn to glimpse the unseen, to sketch the outlines of what hides in the heart of galaxies. You breathe again and imagine yourself standing on Earth centuries ago, when astronomers traced the motions of stars and noticed that some stars circled empty places, invisible partners pulling them in orbits, and from this unseen tug, they guessed the presence of something hidden, something massive yet dark, and thus the first whispers of black holes came not from sight, but from influence, from the way lightless objects bend the paths of what could be seen. And this reminds you that often in life you come to know mysteries not directly, but through their effects, through the way they bend the world around them, through shadows cast by what cannot yet be touched. You let this thought soften and drift further, imagining how modern astronomers use X-rays to reveal black holes, watching matter as it spirals inward, heated to millions of degrees, glowing in high-energy light before it vanishes. And you picture this as a cosmic whirlpool glowing at the edges, a storm of light circling darkness, revealing the presence of the abyss not by what escapes it, but by what struggles at its threshold. And you sense again the poetry, that black holes are framed by halos, their silence surrounded by brilliance, their invisibility painted by fire. You breathe, slower now, and think of gravitational lensing, how the gravity of black holes bends light itself, curving the paths of photons from distant stars so that they form arcs and rings. And you imagine looking through space as though through a glass of water, shapes distorted, light stretched, and yet in these distortions lies truth, the hidden hand of gravity traced in the bending of beams. And this comforts you, for it shows that even what hides can still reveal itself in gentle ways. You drift deeper into this vision, and you picture the Event Horizon Telescope, a network of radio dishes spread across the Earth, all working together to turn our planet into a single eye wide enough to glimpse what no single telescope could. And you recall the image it gave us in 2019, the shadow of the black hole in Galaxy M87, a dark circle framed by a glowing orange halo. Not the black hole itself, but its shadow upon light. And you feel the reverence of that moment, that humanity saw with its own instruments what had long been imagined, that the invisible was outlined for the first time, not in myth but in data, and the image became a kind of portrait of mystery, reminding you that shadows are not emptiness. They are presence made visible in another way. You breathe again, letting the all linger, and you think of echoes not only of light but of sound, though in a vacuum of space no air carries voices. Still black holes ring. They sing through gravitational waves when they collide, ripples in the very fabric of space-time itself. And these waves were first heard in 2015. Detectors on Earth listening to distortions smaller than an atom, hearing the last seconds of two black holes spiraling together and merging into one. And this too became a new sense, a way of listening to the universe through its vibrations. And you let this realization comfort you. That black holes speak in whispers, not of light, but of gravity itself. And we have learned to listen. You drift now into the metaphor, realizing that in life, too, silence can be full of meaning. Shadows can be full of presence. Echoes can carry truths, and you rest in the awareness that absence itself is a form of revelation. You breathe softly, and picture yourself floating near a black hole, not falling inward now, but hovering at a distance, watching the light of stars curve around it, watching the accretion disk glow like a ring of fire, watching the shadow at the center remain calm and still, and you feel soothed, for you understand that darkness is not emptiness, but part of the balance, part of the way the universe reveals its depth. You imagine the echoes of matter flaring as it falls, the jets of energy sometimes streaming outward from spinning black holes, narrow beams that travel thousands of light years, like cosmic lighthouses, paradoxically pouring energy into the universe even as the black hole itself swallows light. And this paradox comforts you too, reminding you that nothing is simple, that darkness can be surrounded by brilliance, that endings can be framed by creation, that mystery can still give. You breathe once more deeply and feel yourself soften into the rhythm. Shadows and echoes, absences and presences, silences and songs, all interwoven, all part of the harmony of the cosmos, and black holes, the darkest of all, become luminous not by what they show, but by what they bend, by what they shape, by what they whisper across space and time. And now, as your mind drifts toward rest, a question arises gently. If all paths lead inward, if shadows and echoes surround the abyss, then what lies at the center? What is the hidden heart of a black hole? The singularity where space-time folds into mystery, and that is where your journey flows next. You breathe softly, carry with you the echoes and shadows of light, and now you drift deeper, past the glowing ring of fire, past the horizon of no return, into the most mysterious place in all of physics, the singularity, the hidden heart of the black hole. And though no one has seen it, though no traveler has returned to tell the story, the idea of the singularity lives in our imagination, in our equations, in the trembling edge of knowledge, and you are invited to explore it gently, not as something to fear, but as something to wonder at, a quiet center where our understanding pauses, where silence becomes profound. You imagine the singularity as the point where gravity grows infinite, where space-time is curved so tightly that the mathematics of relativity can no longer describe it, where the star that collapses crushed into a region of no size, a density beyond measure. And in this vision you feel both awe and humility, for it is not only matter that disappears into the singularity, but also certainty, not only light that cannot escape, but also the laws we thought were unbreakable, and yet this is not despair. It is invitation, the reminder that mystery is part of truth, that the universe is deeper than our current understanding, that there are places where knowledge still waits to unfold. You breathe again and think of how Einstein's equations, so elegant in describing planets and galaxies, falter at the singularity, producing infinities, signals of breakdown, as though the universe itself is whispering that a new language is needed, one that blends relativity with quantum mechanics, one that has not yet been fully written. And in this pause you feel the humility of science, its willingness to admit not knowing, its courage to walk into shadows, its openness to mystery. You drift further, And you imagine the singularity not as a sharp point, but as a hidden chamber, a place where the fabric of reality folds inward, where dimensions may dissolve, where time and space themselves may lose meaning, and though your mind cannot picture it, your heart can sense the poetry, that the center of the black hole is not destruction but transformation, not absence but mystery, not a void but a horizon of possibility, still waiting to be understood. You let this soften you, and you think of how in life, too, there are singularities, moments where your own understanding collapses, where certainty breaks down, where you are forced into silence, and yet those moments are not endings, they are beginnings of new ways of seeing, new languages of being. And so the singularity becomes a mirror, reminding you that the collapse of old frameworks is the opening of new horizons. You breathe again, slowly, and drift into the metaphors physicists have woven. Some imagine the singularity as a seed of another universe, a place where space-time might sprout anew. Others imagine it as a hidden knot, its information tangled but preserved. Still others wonder if the singularity is softened by quantum effects. Not a point of infinite density, but a region of mystery spread across the heart of the black hole, a place where the quantum world and the gravitational world finally meet. And though none of these visions are certain, all are invitations to wonder. All remind you that the singularity is not failure but frontier, not collapse but curiosity. You picture yourself now drifting closer to this hidden heart, and though you cannot see it, you feel its presence as a stillness, a silence deeper than any silence you have ever known, and in that silence you find calm, for here there is nothing left to resist, nothing left to grasp, only to surrender into mystery, and you realize that black holes are not only astrophysical objects, but also meditations on humility, reminders that even our strongest knowledge is edges, that certainty bends and folds, that truth is larger than our language. You pause, letting this thought cradle you, and then you breathe again, slower still, and realize that those singularities hide from our sight. They still shape the universe around them. They still guide galaxies. They still ripple space-time when they merge. And in this paradox you feel peace, the comfort of knowing that what is hidden can still be real, that what is unseen can still shape your world. You drift further now, and let your imagination soften the singularity into metaphor, seeing it as a seed, a pearl, a knot, a still point at the center of a storm, and you let that image soothe you, for even the physics falters, the poetry holds. The singularity is the heart of mystery, the center of silence, the innermost chamber of the cosmos, and though no one may ever enter and return, its presence enriches your sense of wonder. You breathe once more deeply, and as you rest in this awareness, one final question arises like a quiet spark. If singularities hide truths too deep for our current knowledge, could the universe itself be giving us clues in the faint whispers that black holes emit, the gentle radiation Hawking described, the glow of evaporation, the language of particles born from emptiness? And that is where your path flows next. You breathe slowly, carry with you the silence of singularity, the hidden heart that humbles knowledge, and now you drift into another revelation, a whisper that broke the silence, a faint glow predicted not from the depths of space, but from the mind of Stephen Hawking, who, while contemplating the paradox of black holes, discovered that they are not entirely silent, not eternal prisons of light, but instead they glow faintly with a kind of warmth, a radiation born not from their depths, but from the edges of their horizons, and this quiet glow has come to be called Hawking radiation, and though it is so delicate, so faint, that no telescope has yet seen it directly, its existence reshaped our understanding of black holes, for it tells us that even the darkest places in the universe are not perfect voids. Even silence carries a whisper. Even endings hold a slow, long song. You breathe again and imagine yourself hovering just outside a black hole, gazing at the horizon, and there at that edge, you picture space not as empty, but as restless, a quantum sea of fluctuations, particles and antiparticles flickering into existence and vanishing again, born from the vacuum, paired and then gone, and usually these pairs annihilate each other quickly, leaving no trace. But near the event horizon the story changes, for sometimes one particle falls inward while the other escapes, carried outward into space, and though it is only a flicker, only a faint breath, it is radiation, a trickle of energy leaking from the black hole, and over immense timescales this trickle adds up, and the black hole slowly evaporates, slowly shrinks, slowly fades, until eventually, after eons beyond imagining, it disappears entirely, dissolving back into the cosmos as a final whisper of light. You let this image soften in your mind, not as destruction, but as transformation, not as silence, but as a lingering note, the last glow of a star's death carried outward in whispers across eternity. And you find beauty in this, the thought that even black holes, the most enduring structures of gravity, are not eternal, that they too live and fade, that impermanence is woven into the fabric of everything, from atoms to stars to galaxies, and that this impermanence is not loss but rhythm, the cosmic cycle continuing in endless waves. You breathe deeply and think of the paradox this whisper created. For Hawking's prediction meant that black holes evaporate, and if they evaporate, then what are the information they swallowed, the details of every star, every particle, every photon that ever crossed their horizons? Is it erased, lost forever, forbidden to the universe? Yet physics has long taught that information is never truly destroyed, that the universe remembers in its equations, in its entropy, in its unfolding. And here lies the paradox, the great puzzle of black holes. Does Hawking radiation carry the information back in scrambled form, hidden in subtle correlations, or is it gone, erased by the black hole's evaporation? And if it is erased, then do the laws of physics themselves need rewriting? You pause here, breathing slowly, and feel the depth of this puzzle, not as a burden but as wonder, the reminder that black holes are not only astrophysical objects but also laboratories of thought, places where the deepest questions of reality converge. What is information? What is memory? Can the universe forget? You drift deeper into this thought, imagining the radiation as a language, faint and subtle, particles carrying syllables of information outward, too faint for us to yet decipher, but real, woven into the whispers of quantum fields at the horizon. And you picture the black hole glowing like a coal in the night, not with fire but with possibility, fading so slowly that its lifetime stretches far beyond the age of the stars, beyond the death of galaxies, into an era when the universe is dark and cold. And yet even then, the whispers of Hawking radiation continue, carrying light into the silence. You breathe again, slower now, and you imagine this language as poetry, the black hole not roaring but whispering, not consuming but giving back, not eternal but impermanent. And in this impermanence you find peace, for it mirrors your own life. The way every breath you exhale is a whisper back to the universe, the way every heartbeat leaves a trace, the way even silence carries echoes. And so you realize that Hawking radiation is not only physics, it is also metaphor, a reminder that nothing is perfectly silent, that even endings speak, that even shadows glow. You pause, resting in this awareness, and then let your imagination wander into future, billions upon billions of years from now, when the stars are burned out, when galaxies are hushed, when black holes are the last anchors of matter in a cold universe, and slowly, patiently, even they fade, evaporating in bursts of Hawking radiation, their final breaths carrying energy into the void. And you realize that the universe itself is a story of transformation, that nothing remains fixed, that everything flows, and that beauty lies not in permanence but in change. You breathe once more deeply, and let this thought cradle you. Hawking radiation is the universe's way of reminding us that even darkness glows, even silence whispers, even the heaviest hearts are not eternal. And as you soften into rest, one final question rises like a star behind clouds. If black holes glow faintly with whispers of radiation, then what happens to the information they once swallowed? Does it dissolve? Does it return? Does the universe remember? And that is where your journey flows next. You breathe slowly, letting the faint whispers of Hawking radiation linger in your imagination. And now the story leads you into the paradox that grew from those whispers, a puzzle so profound it shook the foundations of physics. For if black holes evaporate, if they fade into nothingness after eons of time, then what becomes of the information they once swallowed? The details of every photon, every atom, every star that crossed the horizon. Is that information erased, gone forever? Or is it somehow preserved in ways we do not yet understand? And here you meet the information paradox, a quiet yet seismic question, one that asks whether the universe itself has a memory, or whether the laws we trust can sometimes be broken. You breathe again, softly, and imagine yourself standing at the edge of a black hole, watching light bend and vanish. And you recall the principle of quantum mechanics, that information is never lost, that every interaction, Every transformation preserves details in hidden ways, scrambled perhaps, but still present, like the ripples that remain after stone is thrown into water, and you let this comfort you, for it suggests that memory is fundamental, that the universe does not forget, and yet the equations of Hawking radiation seem to say otherwise, that the radiation carried only randomness, no pattern, no imprint would have fallen in. And if this were true, then information would vanish when the black hole evaporated, lost forever, and with it, the principle of conservation, the bedrock of quantum theory, undone at the horizon of a black hole. You pause, letting the paradox settle in your mind, not as tension but as wonder, and you realize that black holes are not only objects of gravity, they are crucibles where the deepest rules of physics collide, where relativity and quantum mechanics meet and argue, where certainty bends into mystery, and in this you sense a poetry, that even the universe itself seems unsure how to answer its own question. You drift deeper into the thought, imagining the great physicists who pondered this paradox, Hawking himself insisting at first that information was lost, that black holes were the erasers of the cosmos, while others like Leonard Susskind argue that information must be preserved, that somehow, somewhere, the universe does remember, and their debates span decades, reshaping physics, inspiring new theories, giving birth to ideas like holography and firewalls. And you realize that this paradox is not only about black holes, but also about trust, about whether the universe plays fair with its own rules. You breathe again and imagine the information as a library, every star, every particle a book, and when these books fall into a black hole, do they burn, their words gone forever, or are they rewritten in code upon the horizon, preserved in subtle patterns of radiation, waiting for someone with the patience to read them? You let this metaphor settle, and you find yourself soothed by the thought that even in darkness, even in erasure, there might be preservation, that the cosmos may still hold its memory in forms too subtle for us to yet decipher. You pause again and picture Hawking radiation not as random but as encoded, each particle carrying a syllable of hidden information, scrambled but not erased. And though we cannot yet decode it, perhaps one day we will. And in that possibility lies hope, the reminder that paradoxes are not failures but invitations, doors into deeper understanding. You breathe, slower now, and realize that the information paradox is not only a scientific puzzle, but also a philosophical mirror, for it asks you whether forgetting is possible, whether loss is real, whether silence can erase what once was, or whether every moment, every choice, every breath remains woven into the fabric of existence, preserved in ways you cannot yet see. And this thought comforts you, for it suggests that nothing is ever truly gone, that memory is written deeper than visibility, that even in collapse, traces remain. You drift further, imagining yourself falling into a black hole again, but this time carrying with you the awareness that your story is not erased, it is transformed, perhaps scrambled beyond recognition, perhaps imprinted upon the horizon, perhaps whispered outward in radiation, but never fully lost. And in this vision you see yourself not disappearing but continuing, your information woven into the universe, your memory carried forward in forms you cannot know. You pause, breathing deeply, and you let the paradox cradle you, for it is not resolved yet, not fully answered, and that too is part of its gift, reminding you that some questions are meant to linger, that mystery is part of truth, that wonder itself is nourishment. You breathe once more, and as your body softens into calm, one final thought rises gently. If black holes awaken such paradoxes, if they force us to question memory and information, then perhaps entropy, the measured disorder in memory, is the next key to explore, for black holes are said to be the greatest keepers of entropy in the universe, and that is where your journey flows next. You breathe slowly, carrying the paradox of lost and preserved information, and now the story guides you toward another idea, one that threads through all of physics like a quiet rhythm, an idea called entropy, the measured disorder, the arrow of time, the memory of the universe. And as you rest in calm awareness, you begin to feel what entropy means not through equations, but through experience, the way your coffee cools, the way smoke disperses, the way sandcastles crumble on the shore. Each one a reminder that the universe drifts from order to disorder, from structure to scattering, from clarity to blur. And yet this drift is not decay only, it is also memory. For in entropy the universe writes its history, every scattering a record of what has been, every increase a signature of the arrow of time, And so entropy is not the enemy of meaning, but its keeper. And when you think of black holes, you realize that they're not only object of gravity, but also vaults of entropy, guardians of cosmic memory, their horizons holding more disorder than anything else in the universe. You breathe again and imagine a star collapsing into a black hole, its complex structure, its layers, its atoms, all falling inward. And though to your eyes the black hole looks simple, only mass, spin, and charge describing it, the hidden truth is that its entropy is immense, proportional not to its volume but to the surface area of its horizon. A strange and beautiful discovery made by Jacob Bekenstein, and later expanded by Stephen Hawking, who showed that black holes have entropy as well as temperature, that their horizons are not empty boundaries but surfaces heavy with information. And this insight changed everything, for it meant that black holes are not erasers of memory but keepers of it, not void but libraries, their shells written not in pages but in the geometry of space-time itself. You pause here, letting the thought soften, and you imagine a horizon as a vast, glowing skin, every patch of area encoding a bit of information, like pixels on a cosmic screen. And the bigger the horizon, the more information it can store, until black holes become the greatest memory banks in the universe, their entropy dwarfing that of stars, galaxies, even the cosmic microwave background itself. And this vision comforts you, for it suggests that nothing is ever truly gone, that memory is woven into the very fabric of the horizon, even if scrambled beyond recognition, even if unreadable to us now. You breathe, slower now, and drift into the metaphor of entropy as storytelling, the universe writing its past into every interaction, every scattering of particles, every bending of light, and black holes, as the most compact storytellers of all, their surfaces inscribed with the vastest histories, even if those histories appear to us as silence. You let this awareness cradle you, and you think of your own life, how your memories are written in the entropy of neurons firing, in the patterns of experience etched into your mind, and how, even when details blur, traces remain, echoes of the past lingering in the present, and you see the parallel. You too are an archive, a horizon of memory. Carry with you the entropy of your journey. You breathe deeply, and you realize that entropy is not only about disorder, but also about direction. For it is what gives time its arrow, what makes the past different from the future, what ensures that you remember yesterday but not tomorrow. And so entropy is a rhythm of memory itself, the universe unfolding in one direction, writing its story line by line. And in this awareness you find peace, for it means that time's flow, though irreversible, is also meaningful. It is the writing of history, the unfolding of story, the creation of memory. You drift further into this meditation, and you imagine the entropy of a black hole as the culmination of this principle, the final stage of collapse where all the complexity of stars transformed into the simplicity of mass and spin, but the hidden complexity remains written in entropy, vast and incomprehensible, and you see that black holes are not destroyers but archivists, keeping the memory of a universe in ways we do not yet understand. You breathe once more, slower still, and you recall the holographic principle, the idea that all the information of a region of space may be stored on its surface, and in black holes this principle feels alive, their entropy proportional to surface area, their horizons shimmering as cosmic pages, and you imagine the entire universe as a hologram, its memory written on distant surfaces, every bit of entropy a syllable of the cosmic story. And this vision soothes you, for it suggests that nothing is ever truly lost, that memory is everywhere, inscribed on the skin of space-time. You pause again and let the thought settle gently. Entropy is not destruction. It is preservation in disguise, a scattering that records, a diffusion that remembers, and black holes are the ultimate keepers of this truth. You breathe deeply, and as you rest in this awareness, one final question rises softly. If black holes are the greatest vault of entropy, if their horizons are libraries of memory, then what happens at their edges? When theory collides with paradox, when whispers of firewall suggest a barrier of energy guarding the horizon, and that is where your journey flows next. You breathe slowly, carry with you the vision of black holes as libraries of entropy, their horizons shimmering with hidden memory. And now you drift toward a paradox even sharper, a question that asks whether the very edge of the black hole, the horizon itself, may not be as smooth and gentle as Einstein's theory suggests, but instead may conceal something violent, a wall of energy, a firewall waiting at the threshold. And though this idea is controversial and unsettling, you approach it softly, gently, as a thought experiment that reveals how deeply our understanding is tested at the edges of space-time. You imagine yourself once more drifting toward a black hole, watching the stars bend into arcs, feeling the calm inevitability of descent. And relativity tells you that as you cross the event horizon, you would notice nothing special, no barrier, no flare, just a continuation of your journey inward, smooth and uneventful. But quantum mechanics whispers otherwise, whispering of information, of entanglement, of radiation. And when those whispers are taken seriously, a tension appears. If Hawking, radiation carries information away, then the entanglement between particles inside and outside the horizon becomes strained. And to preserve the rules of quantum theory, some physicists have suggested that the entanglement must break, and when entanglement breaks, energy flares, creating not smoothness but fire, not passage but incineration of the horizon, and this is the firewall paradox. You breathe again softly, and though the word firewall sounds fierce, you treat it as metaphor, a symbol of conflict between theories, a reminder that our two greatest frameworks, general relativity and quantum mechanics, still struggle to coexist at black hole horizons. You let this paradox unfold gently in your mind. On one side, relativity's promise that horizons are smooth, that falling inward feels calm. On the other side, quantum mechanics demand that information is preserved, that entanglement cannot be broken without consequence, and between them lies a contradiction, the possibility of fire where there should be none. You drift deeper into this thought, imagining the horizon as a shimmering veil, and behind the veil two truths argue, bending the fabric of understanding. And though no one knows the answer yet, you feel the beauty in the puzzle, for it shows that the universe is still larger than our knowledge, still more subtle than our equations, still filled with places where mystery blooms. You pause, breathing slowly, and you realize that the firewall paradox is less about whether fire truly burns at the edge and more about what it teaches us, that the union of relativity and quantum mechanics remains incomplete, that there is a deeper theory still waiting to be found, one that will reconcile smooth horizons with preserved information, one that will carry us beyond paradox into harmony. You let this realization soothe you. Paradox is not failure, it is invitation, the edge of knowing calling you further, and in that edge you find wonder rather than fear. You imagine now the horizon glowing faintly, not with destructive flames, but with symbolic fire, a reminder that the surface itself may be active, that the horizon may carry information in subtle ways, that it may not be empty but alive. And this image comforts you, for it suggests that the edge of reality is not a wall but frontier, not an ending but a threshold where deeper truths are waiting. You breathe again, softer now, and think of your own life, of the horizons you approach, the threshold that feels smooth yet filled with uncertainty, and you realize that sometimes they too feel like fire, like endings, but in truth they are beginnings of new frameworks, new languages, new understandings. And this parallel eases you, reminding you that paradoxes are part of every journey, cosmic and human alike. You drift further, imagining physicists debating. Some convinced firewalls must exist, others sure they cannot, and in their debate you sense the vitality of science, the way uncertainty fuels creativity, the way paradox becomes a spark of discovery, and you let yourself rest in the comfort that not knowing is itself a gift, for it leaves room for wonder. You pause once more, and as your breath grows calmer, you picture the horizon of a black hole as a glowing band of indigo and gold, flicker with a tension between smoothness and fire, between relativity and quantum mechanics, and you let that image settle into your mind like a lullaby, gentle, dreamlike, unresolved. You breathe slowly, and as the chapter closes, one final question rises softly, like a ripple in darkness. If firewalls are only one vision, then perhaps the deeper truth lies in another principle altogether, the holographic idea that the universe itself may be written on surfaces, that the horizons of black holes are not walls of fire but pages of memory. And that is where your journey flows next. You breathe slowly, carrying with you the flickering tension of firewalls, the possibility that horizons may be alive with paradox, and now you drift toward a vision even stranger, a principle born from the study of black holes, but reaching far beyond them, a principle that suggests that everything you see, everything you touch, everything you are, may be written not in the depths of space but on its edges, as though reality itself were a hologram, a three-dimensional world projected from a two. dimensional surface. And this vision is called a holographic principle, a phrase at once technical and poetic, hinting that the universe may be a story inscribed upon the sky. You breathe again softly, and recall how this idea grew from the paradox of entropy, from the realization that the information inside a black hole seemed to be stored not in its volume, but in the surface area of its horizon. And if that was true for black holes, then perhaps it was true for the universe as a whole, that the deepest truths of space may be encoded on boundaries rather than within interiors, that what feels solid, full, three-dimensional may in fact be the unfolding of a surface, like the image on a holographic plate, flat but holding depth when illuminated. You let this image soften your mind, and you imagine yourself standing beneath the night sky, stars glittering like letters upon a vast page, and you wonder whether the entire universe is written there, every galaxy, every particle, every breath of your life encoded upon the cosmic horizon, waiting to be read by a deeper understanding. And though the thought feels impossible, it also feels calming, for it suggests that nothing is ever truly lost, that every detail is inscribed, that memory is written on the very surface of being. You drift deeper into this meditation, picturing a black hole again, its event horizon glowing faintly. And you see it now as a screen, a place where information is stored in fine detail, every patch of area holding a tiny unit, every ripple encoding a piece of the story. And you realize that in this vision, the inside is not erased, it is projected, preserved on the boundary, and the paradox of lost information dissolves into a new language, the holographic language, where surfaces are deeper than interiors, where edges carry more than centers, where horizons are not endings but archives. You breathe again, slower now, and let the metaphor expand. Think of a book where the richness of story is contained not in the thickness of the paper but in the letters inscribed on its surface. Think of a seashell where the history of growth is written in spirals upon its exterior. Think of your own skin, where the traces of time, of touch, of sunlight are written, carrying the memory of your life. And now think of the universe itself, written on its horizons, its surfaces, its edges, as though the deepest truths are always at the boundaries. You pause here, resting in this thought, and you sense the gentleness of it. For it means that even if you cannot enter a black hole, even if you cannot recover what falls within, you may still find its story inscribed on the horizon, preserved in subtle ways, encoded in patterns you have yet to read. You let this soothe you, and then you drift further, imagining what it means for reality itself to be holographic, for your three-dimensional world of depth and motion and solidity to be an unfolding of information written on a cosmic screen. And though your senses resist, your imagination accepts, for you know that holograms are illusions of depth made from patterns of light. And perhaps the universe itself is a vast illusion of depth, a pattern of light inscribed on a horizon of space. A projection of truths written far away. You breathe once more, letting this idea settle gently, and you realize that even if the holographic principle is not the final truth, it is a gift, for it teaches you to see differently, to think of surfaces as profound, to treat boundaries not as limits, but as bearers of meaning, to imagine the cosmos itself as a page, a shell, a hologram. You pause again and let your breath soften, and you realize that in your own life, too, surfaces matter, for they are the places of meeting, of touch, of inscription, and beneath them lies depth that cannot exist without them. And so the holographic vision becomes not only a theory of physics, but also a meditation on experience, a reminder that edges are sacred, that boundaries are not ends, but beginnings of new ways of seeing. You breathe again deeply, and as you rest in this awareness, one final question rises like a star emerging from the horizon. If the universe itself is a hologram, if reality is written upon its edges, then what theories might weave this into harmony? What deeper frameworks like strings or loops might hold the answer? And that is where your journey flows next. You breathe slowly. Carry with you the shimmering vision of the holographic sky, the idea that reality itself may be written upon surfaces. And now the story leads you into the attempt of human thought to reconcile the mysteries of gravity and quantum mechanics, to bridge the divide between the smooth curves of space-time and the restless flickers of particles. And this search has taken forms as poetic as it is mathematical. Theories that imagine the universe not as points, but as strings, not as emptiness, but as loops. And in these visions you hear the echo of harmony, the sense that physics is not only description but music, not only equations but song. You breathe again, softly, and you imagine string theory, the idea that at the smallest scales beneath particles and quarks and electrons lies something finer, one-dimensional strings of energy, vibrating in countless ways, and the different vibrations give rise to different particles, just as different notes arise from the plucking of a violin. And you let this image soften you, for it suggests that the universe itself is an instrument, that all matter, all forces, all light, all gravity are. Melodies played upon strings too small to see, and in this vision the singularity dissolves. For strings cannot be compressed to points, and so black holes may not end in infinities but in vibrating filament of energy, softening the paradox with harmony. You drift further into this thought, and you imagine entire landscapes of strings, woven into brains, extended surfaces where universes themselves might exist, parallel worlds floating like sheets. And though this vision feels dreamlike, it comforts you, for it shows that physics can be expansive, creative, willing to imagine possibilities as vast as poetry. You breathe deeply and let your awareness shift toward another vision, loop quantum gravity, a theory that imagines space-time itself not as smooth and continuous, but as woven from tiny loops, discrete quantum geometry, a network of threads that weave the fabric of reality. And in this vision, the singularity softens as well, for space-time cannot collapse beyond the smallest loop. And so the hidden heart of a black hole is not infinite but finite, not unknowable but woven, and though the details are still uncertain, the metaphor soothes you, for it shows the universe as tapestry, every loop a knot of being, every intersection a moment of time, every weave a structure of space. You pause here, breathing slowly, and let the metaphors of strings and loops overlap, one vision musical, one vision woven, and both pointing toward harmony, toward a union of quantum mechanics and gravity, toward a deeper language that has not yet been fully spoken. And you realize that this search is not only scientific, but also spiritual, a human longing to reconcile opposites, to bring together what is split, to find music in mathematics, weaving in equations, poetry and physics. You let this awareness soften you, and you reflect that even if the final theory is not yet known, even if strings and loops are steps along the way, their beauty lies in the journey itself, in the willingness to imagine, to reach, to listen for a harmony in the silence of the cosmos. You breathe once more, slower now, and you think of how black holes are the testing grounds for these theories, their singularities pressing our equations to breaking, their horizons demanding reconciliation, and in this pressure new visions are born, like music arising from tension, like weaving emerging from threads pulled taut, and you realize that black holes are not only objects but also teachers, inviting us to search for deeper harmony, forcing us to invent new languages of thought. You drift further and imagine yourself floating in a universe of strings, hearing their vibrations as a soft symphony, or walking upon loops of space-time woven into a glowing net, feeling the fabric beneath your feet. And though these visions are metaphors, they soothe you, for they remind you that the universe is not chaos but structure, not silence but music, not void but tapestry. And your being is part of that song, part of that weave, your atoms vibrating, your moments woven your life, inscribed into the harmony of existence. You pause again, resting in this awareness, and then you breathe deeply, letting the chapter close with a question rising gently in your mind. If strings and loops are attempts to reconcile the paradox, then perhaps black holes themselves are more than mysteries. Perhaps they're librarians, keepers of memory, holding the stories of the universe within their horizons. And that is where your journey flows next. You breathe slowly, letting the harmonies of strings and the weaving of loops dissolve into stillness, and now you drift into a softer vision, one where black holes are not destroyers but keepers, not thieves of light but librarians of the cosmos, guardians of information whose shells are written in horizons of space-time, and though their silence may seem erasure, their patience may be preservation. For many physicists now believe that what falls into a black hole is not truly lost but rather scrambled, encoded, transformed, and perhaps one day revealed. And in this way black holes become cosmic librarians, vast and silent, holding the record of stars and galaxies, of light and matter, of stories once told in fire, and then folded into shadow. You breathe again and imagine standing before a black hole, not as a mall but as a great library, its horizon like an endless wall of books, every page written in patterns of entropy, every bit of surface encoding details of what lies within, though scrambled beyond recognition, like letters tossed into the wind, yet still preserved, waiting in principle to be read. And though you cannot read them now, you take comfort in the thought that memory is not gone, that the universe is a careful archivist, that what once was remains inscribed, not erased but transformed. You let this soften you, and you recall how Hawking once believed information was destroyed, how his own insights into radiation seemed to demand it, but later in life he revised his view, suggesting that perhaps the information is not destroyed but encoded in subtle correlations within the radiation itself, hidden in patterns too faint for us yet to decode, like whispers in static, like ink visible only under starlight. And this shift matters, for it restores the principle of cosmic memory, the idea that nothing is ever fully lost. You drift further into this awareness and imagine the holographic principle once more, the notion that the horizon itself is the shelf upon which information is written, and in this way black holes become not void to books, their surfaces shimmering with encoded stories, their entropy the index of their collections, and this image soothes you, for it means that the universe itself is a library, every black hole a volume, every horizon a page, every patch of space-time an inscription. You breathe deeply and feel the poetry of this, the way it mirrors your own experience. For you too are a library, your cells holding the history of stars, your mind storing the echoes of days, your heart carrying the stories of those you have known, and though memories fade, though details blur, traces remain encoded in your being, just as the universe encodes its memory and horizons. You pause here, letting the metaphor expand, and you picture the cosmic web of galaxies, each with a black hole at its center, and you realize that the universe is filled with these librarians, millions, billions of them, each one keeping record, each one guarding the memory of its galaxy. And this vision comforts you, for it suggests that the cosmos is not careless but careful, not forgetful but attentive, preserving the stories of what has been in ways deeper than we can yet see. You breathe again and let your imagination wander forward in time, into the far future, when stars have burned out, when galaxies have grown dark, and only black holes remain, patient guardians of memory, their horizons still shimmering faintly with encoded information, their shelves still intact, and even as they slowly evaporate over eons, their radiation may carry the information outward, scattering it back into the cosmos, like a librarian eventually returning books to the shelves of the universe itself. And in this vision you see black holes not as ends, but as participants in a cycle, their silence not destruction, but preservation until the moment comes to release. You pause once more, breathing slowly, and realize that this vision of black holes as librarians is not only science but philosophy, for it touches on a human longing to be remembered, to have stories preserved, to trust that what we do is not erased, and in the cosmic metaphor you find comfort, for it suggests that memory is woven into the very laws of reality, that nothing is ever truly gone, only transformed, only reshelved in another form. You breathe deeply and let this settle in you, a gentle reassurance, and then one final question rises softly, like a page turning in the silence of a great library. If black holes are archivists of the cosmos, preserving stories rather than erasing them, then what does this mean for us, for our understanding of memory, of forgetting, of impermanence? And that is where your journey flows next. You breathe slowly, carry with you the image of black holes as cosmic librarians, guardians of stories written in horizons of space-time, and now the journey turns inward. For even as physics suggests that memory is preserved, scrambled and hidden but never erased, the heart wonders about forgetting, about what it means to lose, about whether impermanence is a kind of erasure or whether it is something softer, something necessary. And so you begin to contemplate the philosophy of forgetting, guided by the quiet metaphors of black holes. You imagine again the paradox of information. Some say it is lost forever in the abyss. Others say it is encoded on the horizon. Still others that it radiates back in faint whispers of Hawking light. In those science debates, you realize the question itself has become a mirror for human experience. For you too live with uncertainty about memory, carrying some details forever while others dissolve, keeping some stories clear while others fade into haze. And you wonder, is forgetting destruction, or is it transformation? You breathe again and picture a black hole's horizon, smooth and calm, holding secrets that cannot be seen. And you realize that forgetting may be the same, not loss but concealment, not erasure but storage beyond reach, like books sealed in a library's deepest archive, unreadable now, but still existing, still present, even if not accessible. And this thought comforts you, for it suggests that forgetting is not the end of memory, but the soft folding of it into silence. You pause here, letting the thought drift through you, and you remember how entropy writes the arrow of time, how disorder increases and details scatter, and perhaps forgetting is simply entropy within a mind, memories diffusing, scattering, blending into background. But even so, they shape the whole, even if no longer distinct, just as the heat of dispersed atoms shapes the warmth of a room, even if no single atom is remembered. You drift deeper into this awareness, and you see how forgetting is not an enemy but companion. For without it, the mind would overflow, unable to rest, unable to let go, unable to dream. And so forgetting is also a mercy, a way for memory to breathe, a way for stories to dissolve into silence, so that new stories can unfold. And you realize that black holes, too, perform this function for the universe, gathering what once burned brightly, folding it inward, holding it silently, so that the cosmos can move forward, so that new stars can rise, new galaxies can form, new life can emerge. You breathe again, slower now, and you think of how philosophers and poets have always wrestled with forgetting, some fearing it as death, others welcoming it as release, and in your calm reflection you see both sides. You see that forgetting is loss and yet also renewal, that it hurts and yet also heals, that it is both the end of detail and the beginning of peace. And in this paradox you feel a tenderness, for it mirrors the paradox of black holes, which appear to erase and yet may preserve, which seem to silence and yet may whisper, which look like ends and yet are also beginnings of deeper understanding. You let this awareness soothe you, and you reflect on your own life, on the memories you carry and the ones you have lost, and you realize that the lost ones have not destroyed you. They have shaped you. They have softened you. They have allowed you to continue. And in this way, forgetting is not the absence of meaning, but its transformation into something quieter, something unspoken, something felt rather than remembered. You pause again, breathing softly, and you let the metaphor deepen. Black holes and memory are both about what is hidden, what cannot be seen directly, and yet both reveal themselves in echoes and effects in the shaping of what remains. And so forgetting is not absence but shadow, not emptiness but presence in another form. And you take comfort in that thought, for it means that even what is gone still shapes you, still guides you, still lingers in the background of being. You drift now into a softer meditation. Perhaps forgetting is necessary for forgiveness, for healing, for growth. For just as the universe cannot cling forever to the form of a star, but must allow it to collapse, to scatter, to transform, so too you cannot cling to every memory, every wound, every detail, but must allow some to dissolve, to scatter, to fade, in order to continue, in order to grow, in order to dream. You breathe once more, slowly, deeply, and you see forgetting not as the enemy of memory, but as its companion. The silence that gives shape to song, the darkness that frames the light, the pause that makes the note meaningful. And in this you feel peace, for it means that forgetting is not erasure but rhythm, part of the harmony of being. You let this realization cradle you, and as the chapter closes, one final question rises softly in your mind. If forgetting is as natural as remembering, if black holes remind us that nothing is ever fully lost, only hidden, then what horizons still await us? What unseen futures lie ahead as we continue to search the cosmos? And that is where your journey flows next. You breathe slowly, carry with you the philosophy of forgetting, the comfort that nothing is truly erased, only transformed, and now you drift toward the final horizon of this journey, not the horizon of no return that surrounds a black hole, not the horizons of paradox or firewalls or holograms, but a horizon of the future, the horizon yet unseen, where our questions reach beyond our current knowledge, where discoveries still wait in the silence of the cosmos. And as you rest in calm, awareness, you let yourself imagine what lies ahead. For black holes are not the end of science. They are at beginning again and again. Each paradox they awaken leading to new theories. Each mystery they preserve calling forth deeper understanding. And so you drift into this horizon of possibility with a gentle curiosity. You breathe again and think of the new tools humanity has built to study black holes, the detectors that listen for gravitational waves, the telescopes that see across the globe, the computers that simulate the collapse of stars. And you realize that each instrument is like a new sense, an extension of our eyes and ears into realms once hidden. And you imagine future instruments yet to be born, telescopes that can see Hawking radiation, detectors that can trace the subtle encoding of information and radiation, observatories that can peer into the cores of galaxies with clarity beyond imagining, and you feel awe at the thought that our species, so small upon one planet, is able to glimpse such enormities, able to dream of horizons billions of light years away. You breathe softly and let this image expand. Perhaps one day we will test string theory and loop quantum gravity. Perhaps we will weave them into a single framework. Perhaps we will find that space-time itself is emergent, a phenomenon rising from deeper layers of quantum information. And in that discovery, black holes will cease to be mysteries and will instead become teachers, the places where the deepest truths of reality are revealed, the libraries where the universe's structure is most clearly inscribed. You pause here, letting the thought soften, and you realize that even if we never fully know, the journey itself is enough. The search itself is a horizon, for knowledge is always unfolding, always expanding, always leading to new edges. And so black holes remind us not of endings, but continuations, of horizons that recede as we approach, of mysteries that deepen as we learn. You breathe again, slower now, and you let your mind drift even further, into the far future of the cosmos itself. Imagine the age when stars have burned out, when galaxies have grown dark, when black holes are the last giants standing, slowly evaporating over unimaginable spans of time, releasing their final whispers of hawking radiation into a quiet universe. And in this vision you see not despair but peace, the slow unfolding of impermanence, the graceful fading of even the most powerful. And you take comfort in the rhythm of it, for it mirrors your own life, the rise and fall, the burning and the fading, the memory and forgetting, the silence that follows, all part of the same song. You breathe deeply and realize that the unseen horizon is not only in physics, but also in you. For every day you live with horizons yet unseen, questions unanswered, futures unknown, and like the universe itself, you move forward without certainty, guided only by curiosity, by wonder, by the willingness to cross thresholds into mystery. And this awareness soothes you, for it means that you are not separate from the cosmos. You are part of its rhythm. You are a traveler of horizons. You are woven into its fabric, falling and rising with its tides. You pause here, resting in this calm, and you let the thought cradle you. Black holes do not end the story. They deepen it. They remind us that the universe is vast beyond measure, that knowledge is partial, that wonder is infinite, and so long as there are horizons yet unseen, there's always more to dream, more to ask, more to imagine. You breathe once more, slower than before, and as you soften into rest, you let the final image linger. The night sky above you is a great ocean of stars, each one a beacon, each one a story, and scattered among them the invisible librarians, the keepers of memory, the black holes whose silence still sings, and beyond them, horizons stretching endlessly outward, horizons you cannot yet cross, horizons waiting to be seen. And in this endless openness, you find peace.